Hi, my name is Allyssa White, and this is my video presentation for Bio 282 Lab. My news article's title was Studies Suggest Abused Children Carry Trauma in Their DNA. And my primary literature article's title was Exposure to Childhood Abuse is Associated with Human Sperm Methylation. My news article can be found on the Boston Globe and is by Kelly Collis. It started off by associating stress causing different health issues, i.e. mental health disorders and heart diseases. So it reported that the experiment results in 34 samples of sperm being collected from males both with and without past abuse. It concluded that child abuse may be altering DNA, which could then be passed on to future children. And it also states that the DNA alterations may someday be used in court for abuse allegations. Overall, the news article is very informative. Not a lot of opinion or bias is shown. It mainly relies on the evidence from the study. Information is simplified but still accurate. However, it does still use information to draw claims that are not in the study. For the study, it focused not only on the effects of abuse, but also on their offspring. They actually collected 46 sperm samples from 34 men. The results proved that childhood abuse is associated with sperm DNA methylation. The higher the trauma the exposure, the higher the odds of methylation, and it could have harmful effects on future generations, such as higher risk of neurodevelopmental issues and physical health disparities. So this study is about testing whether or not childhood abuse affects the DNA in the sperm of the abused and what repercussions it has on future generations. Sperm samples were taken from both men who had been abused and men who had not, and since it is a scientific study, there was no bias or no opinions that was not backed up by evidence. Sperm DNA methylation is a major factor for controlling gene expression to embryo development. So when this methylation alters it, that can cause some of the disparities in health and mentalities. This is figure 1. The figure shows that sites that correlate with the 450K sites that relate to childhood abuse. This figure shows the methylation of sperm DNA cells as well as other sites that are affected and changed by childhood abuse. You could see that there's the no childhood abuse, some, and then high, which correlates to the higher the trauma, the higher the problems with the methylation. And that's what goes through there. So were they similar or different? The news article was pretty similar to the study. They both talked about the procedure of the experiments and how sperm was taken from both the abused and the non-abused. They both talked about possible effects of future offspring, and they were both very informative. The article did not go too far off of the study. However, there were some differences. The study was the only one that showed figures. There was no figures present in the news article. The news story made more claims of what the study might be able to do, i.e. the court evidence. And the study focused more on health impacts than the news story did. The news story was more about how the DNA was changing and what that meant versus what it does. The news story also did not go into specifics about what was being changed. They did not mention sperm DNA methylation. They just mentioned DNA being altered by child abuse. So overall, they were very similar. However, the news story just simplified the information way more than the study did, which did lead to some mistranslations. So my conclusion, overall the news story that the Boston Globe released is pretty accurate. Compared to other news sources, the Boston Globe didn't stray too far from the actual study. They kept to the information pertaining to the study. That being said, the news story wasn't entirely accurate. They didn't specify what was being observed and studied. They also made a couple of claims of how it could help in the future that were not backed up by facts. The scientific information, I would trust the Boston Globe to give accurate information via their news articles. However, I would still make the effort to look at the study just to make sure that I'm seeing everything there is, because again, the news article did not mention what exactly was being changed. They were more about, oh, this can change your DNA, why you should be concerned. So yes, it is accurate. However, I would not forgo looking over the actual study, because the actual study was more informative than the news article. So lastly, this is my works cited page. Then again, thank you everyone for listening. Yeah, goodbye.